One of the first really original games that we'd seen coming out of Nintendo for quite some time, Splatoon rightfully got an awful lot of praise when it released for Wii U a couple of years ago. Not only was it Nintendo really tackling multiplayer shooters for the first time, but they did it with an awful lot of style and panache that didn't resort to shoving Mario's moustached mug onto the cover of the box. It's not a surprise that a direct sequel is on the way to the Switch, and the last few days have had a sprinkling of hour-long windows to test the game out in Splatoon 2's Testfire. There's a lot that is immediately familiar from the first game in the Testfire, from the style of the music to the look of the demo's stripped down bare-bones menus, all the way through to the actual multiplayer gameplay itself. The aim of the Turf War game mode is still exactly the same, with victory determined not by how many opponents you've managed to kill, but by how much of the ground you've covered in your team's paint. Splatting your enemies into these squiddy little ghosts obviously helps because they're not around to cover the floor for their team themselves, but you also need to play intelligently and keep in mind the real goal of the game mode. The Testfire had 4 weapons to choose from: the returning Splatter Shot, Splat Charger, Splat Roller, and the new Splat Dualies, a pair of paint guns that you hold akimbo. Each of these comes with a bespoke loadout of the main weapon, alongside a sub-weapon and a special attack that is earned by covering the floor with your colour. But all of these have been tweaked and altered since the original game, and they've even been modified since the demo that they had available to play back in January. The Splat Roller, for example, is still the equivalent to a shotgun in the game. It lets you cover huge areas of the map with paint very easily, but then it forces you to get pretty close to an enemy to splat them, either by rolling over them with the Splat Roller itself or flinging paint from a short distance. However, one new change is that if you fling paint while you jump, it's now thrown in a vertical line, giving you a longer reach but needing you to be more precise with your aim. The special, meanwhile, is now the splashdown attack, which sees you jump up into the air a couple of feet and then come smashing down and covering this wide area with an explosion of paint. The Splat Dualies might just be my new favourite weapon in the game, not only just because they look cool, but because there's new little tricks with them. You've now got a dodge roll move when you're firing, you've got a curling bomb that heads off in a straight line and bounces off things and then explodes, and that is great for creating a path that you can swim through very, very quickly. That's joined by the Inkjet, which, no, it's not a printer from Epson, but a jetpack that lets you fly up into the sky and then allows you to fling as many paint bombs as you possibly can from up on high. You do still need to be pretty precise with where you're aiming though, because it's not a guaranteed kill unless you hit an enemy dead on. The Splatter Shot now has the Tenta missile lock-on missile launcher, but don't worry, it's not overpowered. You can dodge incoming missiles if you're aware and quick enough to do so, while the Splat Charger now comes with the Stingray that spews this huge stream of paint for several seconds but is very slow to aim. All of this feels a lot like Nintendo fleshing out and rebalancing the existing weapons, as well as adding new ones to the mix. Specials aren't just infinite versions of sub-weapons anymore, and there's more nuance and all of these little tricks that you can learn as you're playing. For example, you can combine the splashdown with a super jump that has you arcing across the map to a buddy, while rolling with the dualies pauses your character in a quick little crouched pose that then combines both reticules into one for a stronger attack. The first game made use of the gamepad's second screen to display the map and let you perform super jumps and arc through the sky to a teammate's position, but you don't have that option and the second screen functionality in Splatoon 2, so it's now brought up by pressing the X button instead. Sadly, despite the Switch featuring a touchscreen, there's no touch controls for the map when in handheld mode, which I do actually hope is added for the final game because it can be much more intuitive, as opposed to using the D-pad or the gyro to try and aim at a player's icon. Of course, the trade-off is that, unlike with the first game, you can now play the game in bed, because the original forced you to play on TV with the second screen functionality. Speaking of the gyro controls, yes, the game still defaults to having motion controls for aiming, but for whatever reason I simply didn't get along with that quite so well in this Testfire. When I did get on with it pretty well in the original game, I actually went back to the first Splatoon to double check, and for some reason it feels better for me there. I'm not sure what's going on, and that was true for me whether I was playing on TV or in handheld mode. Thankfully, I was able to change this to the more conventional dual stick controls, although this was tucked away in a tiny little menu option which you couldn't access when in a multiplayer game. I think ideally I want to see a combination of the two, so I can aim fully with the right analog stick but then use the motion controls and the gyro to just alter my aim ever so slightly. Some of the other quirks and oddities from the first Splatoon remain. I mean, why can't I change my weapons and loadout during a match? Or, failing that even, just let me change my weapons whilst I'm waiting for a match to start and I'm in a lobby. Give me this kind of Overwatch-esque team composition indicator so I can see what my teammates are using and then I can adapt to them and we can have a nice balance of weapons. There's plenty of other things which I won't go into too much, but hopefully these little hang-ups can all be resolved before the game is released this summer. Not only that, but I demand that Nintendo bring back the Squid Jump minigame to play during the lobby. At the end of the day, Splatoon 2 is more of Splatoon, which can only be seen as a good thing, where Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is fine because Mario Kart 8 is basically the pinnacle of kart racing games. Splatoon is still new and it's refreshing, and having this direct sequel instead of a remaster allows Nintendo to evolve the gameplay. They can rebalance and bring in new weapons, there's new maps, and there's a smattering of new ideas as well. This has just been a tiny taste of the wider game, but there's still plenty that Nintendo need to do before the game is released, not least of which is fleshing out their online infrastructure. They need to push out the smartphone app, voice chat, parties and so on, but in terms of Splatoon 2 itself, I'm really liking what I'm seeing. Thanks for checking out this video, and obviously give us a squids up if you liked it, and splatscribe if you want to see more of our videos in future. Also, just come over and visit us on the6thAxis.com for more gaming goodness. Hopefully you'll swing by sometime soon, and we will see you then. Goodbye!